to you all, and thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Diogo, and I'm from Invest Lisboa, which is the investment promotion agency of the city of Lisbon. We are responsible for the promotion of Lisbon as an investment destination, and we also offer support for investors, for companies, for entrepreneurs that are deciding if Lisbon makes sense for them. So we support with information, we make organized fact-finding missions here in Lisbon. Lately, we don't have that much because of the coronavirus. But we also keep on supporting companies and investors and startups that have already decided to move to Lisbon, and we keep on supporting until the project is implemented. I'm also a member of the board of the Ireland-Portugal Business Network, and that's why I'm here. I would also like to mention, and to be fair and clear, that I'm not an expert in finance, and my goal here is to share with non-Portuguese speakers some information that is available in Portuguese, but not in English, about the support and the government response to support small business in this time of crisis. So I would like to start with this cartoon. It's from Graham Mackay, and I think that this illustrates very well the situation we are currently experiencing. We are still dealing with the first wave, the health issue problem, but also we are trying and thinking of measures that could minimize the impact of the second wave, of the economic impact in this that we will have, mainly because of the measures we had to take to fight the health issue. This is a new situation for everybody. It's completely unprecedented. And so we are all learning on the job. Everything is changing very rapidly. We have to make very fast decisions, and the measures are put on forward with have to be fast but efficient, and sometimes, many times, the measures are changed to improve and to make it better. But it's a moving situation, so everything I say today, tomorrow could be different, so we have to keep on following the news. In my opinion, everybody is doing their best to fight even the health issue, and also to try to minimize and prevent the impacts on the economic front. As we are all aware, after the health crisis, an economic one is coming. And in the short run, the most important challenges for this are the survival of companies and the preservation of jobs. And most measures are focused on these short-term objectives of keeping the business running and trying to preserve as much jobs as possible, because only then we can avoid or minimize, not avoid probably, but minimize the impact, the economic impact that we are facing. So the economic forecasts of the crisis from many different institutions, this one is from Roland Berger, indicates a global impact that could go from the loss of 3.5 percentage points on the global GDP in a mild scenario, up to 9 points lost if things get really tough. Here is a representation of the impact in some different industries according to the liquidity, the impact of lack of liquidity in the short run in this axis here, and also the impact of profitability in 2020. And it's no surprise to see that the industries that will be more affected are tourism, aviation, retail, and that is very important for Portugal, because the Portuguese GDP is strongly dependent on these sectors. And just for an example, the tourism sector in Portugal represents 8% of the GDP and 10% of the national workforce. So we are expecting that in the short run, these impacts will affect us. But also 38% of the Portuguese international trade are with countries that are strongly affected by this crisis. And I'm thinking about Spain, Germany, France, Italy. And so this is also another challenge. Another issue is that most companies, the structure of our economy is composed by lots of SMEs, small and medium enterprises. A little half of the turnover in Portugal comes from SMEs, 56%, and 78% of the jobs are provided by SMEs. The problem of the challenge here is that SMEs naturally don't have, or probably don't have, the financial reserves necessary to face this problem. So they will have a liquidity issue in the short run, for sure. And this liquidity issue could jeopardize the preservation of jobs and also, and even the business itself. So this is the main short run challenge that we have to overcome and face. Our scenarios for the economy that was presented by the Portuguese Central Bank are similar to the European one. So it's in a mild scenario, we are expect to have 3.7 loss, 3.7 percentage points loss in our GDP. And that could go up to a loss of 5.7% percentage points, sorry. And in employment forecasts, we are talking about no less than at least 10% unemployment. That could go up to almost 12% in 2020. The optimistic view of this crisis, comparing to the crisis that we had in 2008, is that the forecasts all predict a much faster recovery. And the numbers are already positive in 2021, and the recovery is expected 2021. We are already very positive, and 2022 we have probably, if forecasts are correct, have recovered. Very different from the 2008 crisis, that only in 2015 we started to see some better results. But for these reasons I mentioned, the SME structure, the industries that are expected to have a more significant impact, and the markets we are usually, our international trade usually is connected. The major Portuguese objectives for the short run in these measures are keeping the economy working, mostly preventing companies from closing, and preserving jobs. Those are the main drivers of every measure that were announced so far. So these are the measures that I will mention today. There are more measures that were already in place that could help companies at the moment. These are the measures that were created especially for this situation. As I said, the policies are being created on the job, and they are always changing. Every day there are new announcements. For example, credit lines that we have today and that we can go to the bank and try to access one are worth 3.4 billion euros. But Monday, the economy minister said that he has asked an authorization to the European Commission to increase the credit lines up to 7 billion euros worth. So as I mentioned, everything is changing. This new exchange will be, according to the newspapers, will be more focused on trade and service sectors and also industry, as we have a line already settled. So we have to always be updated about this. Sorry. As I mentioned, these measures so far had two big intents. One is to increase short-term liquidity for the companies, and it's mainly through credit lines availability. And the other is to relieve fixed costs or to reduce fixed costs. And these measures that are around postponing payments to state or to credit institutions, and also the simplify process of layoff to allow companies to reduce costs in the short run. Of course, we cannot do everything alone, and we need to have a European solidarity in here. And although the European Council is still discussing which measures they should take, and of course in Portugal we defend, and many other countries defend, that the best solution would be some kind of euro bonds, so to mutualize the debt, euro bonds or corona bonds or whatever name they could have. That's not decided yet, and it's proving to be difficult. But the European central bank has already put forward a measure of investing 750 billion euros to buy bonds, national and private bonds. And that is a measure that was put forward trying to avoid a sovereign debt crisis as we have in 2008. And also the European Commission has allowed member states to have allowed more flexibility in European competition and fiscal rules that will allow member states to support their companies, which was not allowed before, to directly support or to support through this credit line. And that's what allowed, for example, the credit lines to be guaranteed by the state by 90%. The Portuguese government and the other governments in Europe tried to have 100% guarantee, but that was not approved, but 90% to reduce risk and try to reduce the spread as well. Sorry. I will also mention, but not in detail, the 15 measures that Municipality of Lisbon took to address the impact that the coronavirus has on families and businesses. So, increasing liquidity. So one of the tools the government made available for companies is the creation of credit lines. There are 6 credit lines. There are targeted to different sectors and industries. The total worth of these lines is 3.46 billion euros. The first 4 lines that are called COVID-19, they all have more or less the same conditions. The only difference is the amount of the funds available and the industry that they are available for. I put the name here in Portuguese, so anyone could easily try to find information and the legal documents and the guidelines for these funds. They are already available in banks. Most of them, all of them, except this last one. Oh, sorry, this last one for the tourism, for micro companies in the tourism sector, are managed through the banks, and so I will mention each one of them, but most of the conditions are more or less the same, which is taking this as an example. So all these 4 COVID-19 credit lines have a max credit per operation of 1.5 million per operation for company. for company of medium-sized companies, 500,000 euros for small companies, 50,000 for micro companies. And the companies, the credit offered to companies may not exceed 25% of the turnover of last year, and they may not also go over twice the costs, the personal costs that the companies have each year. The maturity of these credit lines is 4 years, and there is a grace period of 12 months. The spread are two possibilities of spread: fixed rate indexed to Euribor swap rate, or a variable rate indexed to Euribor that could be for 1, 3, 6, or 12 months, plus a spread that could go no higher than 1.5%. To access this credit, companies must have a positive balance and must be committed not to reduce an employed personnel, so no firings planned. And the process is managed by the banks, as I mentioned. To be honest, I do not know how they will, what will happen if a company access these funds and later has to let go of some people. Maybe they have to return the value. I'm not sure. With the layoff, that's what happened. There's the same commitment of not reducing employed people, and if by some reason the company has to let go of any employee, they have to return the value of the support. So I don't know if it's the same here yet. So this one is targets to restaurant and similar industries, have a total worth of 600 million euros. There's another one with a total worth of 200 million euros for travel agencies and other touristic animation industries. Again, the other conditions are the same: max credits, maturity, spread, and all that. Third one that also focus on the tourism sector with 900 million euros. So you can see the government is very worried about the impact of the tourism sector in our economy. And I know that some of you work with tourism sector, so I think it could be worth taking a look to see if this is interesting for your companies or for your clients. So this one is 900 million, tourist sectors and similar industries. And this is the largest credit line of 1.3 billion euros, and it's target to industrial activities. So let me just put my notes, update my notes. Now, this is a different program. It's a line that was already in place and was created an objective to face with COVID, the coronavirus situation. And it was increased on 400 million for the coronavirus line. It targets SMEs and other companies. In certain conditions, larger companies can also apply for this. But they have to have presented profits in the last financial statement. In this case, there are two objectives in this line. One is to fund working capital, and the other is to fund treasury. The max credit per operation is up to 3 million, 1.5 for working capital and 1.5 for treasury. And the other ones were guaranteed by the government by 90%, this one is 80%. The maturity is 4 years for the working capital line and 3 years for the treasury one. The spread is also a fixed rate or a variable rate, but indexed to Euribor, but the spread here it's headed on 3.258%. So it's much more expensive here. And again, this is a credit that is a partnership with the bank. So if you want to know more or apply or understand, the bank is where you should go. Finally, there's this line that is 6 million euros of microcredit. This is completely different situation. It's for micro companies, so companies with no more than 10 employees and a turnover of 2 million. And again, it's addressed to the tourism sector. Only companies that were not in a difficult situation prior to the crisis can apply for this line. So the max credit operation is 750 euros per month for each existing employee on the 29th of February, multiplied by a 3 months period, but it cannot go over 20,000 euros for each company. The maturity is 3 years and with a grace period of 1 year, and this one has no interest cost, so you only have to return capital. Contrary to all the others, this one is managed by the Turismo Portugal, the Portuguese Tourism Office. So that's where you should go to have more information or to get access to this credit line. Now, concerning measures to reduce the fixed costs on the short run, there are 3 measures that I'll mention: a moratorium from the credits to the financial institutions, a moratorium from payments to the state, and a simplified process for layoff. The objective of both moratoriums is basically to postpone the payments. In this case, it's for moratorium from the financial institution, so it's for credits that you had on the bank, on the commercial bank. You can, if you wish, postpone the payments of both interest and capital. And the objective, of course, is to promote liquidity in the companies, to postpone the payments to a moment where hopefully the economy is running better, and so it could be easier to pay, and you can have this extra liquidity at this difficult moment to invest on your company and your employees. This applies both to private, individual, and businesses. So families that could apply for postpone on the payment of their housing credit, for example, house credit, for example, their residential. I will focus only on the business part. Basically, is a postponement of 6 months. It's not a bail-off, so you have to pay it anyway, but you can pay, you can extend the credit term in 6 months and have a grace period of 6 months for the moment. This, in case of the companies, cover all credit operations that are normal or essential to the activity of the company, including leasing and factoring, but it does not cover credits that you had already had to buy securities or for the acquisition of other financial products. Also doesn't apply to bona fide credits granted under incentive programs, with the exception of the program Regressar, which is a program addressed to private individuals, not businesses. And also the credit card companies and personal companies are not included in this moratorium. Likewise, the government decided to allow companies to postpone payments on their tax obligations and to have a easier way to pay the contributions to the Social Security. And this applied to all businesses. In terms of the tax, basically there's a new tax calendar to postpone the payments that's supposed to be paid between March and June onwards. In the case of the Social Security contributions, those may be paid in 3 or 6 installments, and it goes like this. The workers' contribution, part of the contribution, which is 11% of the gross wage, must be paid normally. It must be paid in a month they are due. The company's contribution, which is 23.25% of the gross wage of each employee of the month of March, April, and may be paid in a different way. 1/3 on the month that is due, and the remaining 2/3 can be paid in 3 or 6 successive installments. The first time I heard about this option, you could pay in 3 or 6, but if you chose 6 installments, you had to pay interest over the 3 last ones. But what I read yesterday, they didn't mention this, so they probably change, and they can pay from 3 to 6 equal and successive installments. But if it, I can later confirm that if possible. At the moment, I'm not sure. I think it's without interest, but I can later confirm if you need. So here is the new fiscal calendar. As you can see, the taxes obligations were postponed from March to June, from May to July, and from July to August. Again, this is just a measure to try to offer more liquidity to companies in this coming month. It's not a bailout. Finally, another tool that is available for companies, it's a simplified way of layoff. Layoff is a legal option that allows companies to suspend or reduce the normal working hours of the employee. And they also, in this case, have access to a financial support to cover part of the salary of the employee in layoff situation. So basically, the employee in layoff situation will maintain 2/3 of the gross salary with a minimum of 635 euros and a maximum of 1,905 euros per month. This cost is supported in 70% by the Social Security, and the company will have to support 30% of this cost. But I will go in further details about this part in a moment. But first, to understand in each situations, you may request layoff. So there are 3 options, 3 situations where layoff, simplified layoff is available. One is if you temporarily close your business by the order of public authorities, following the decree law that was published saying that certain businesses have to be closed. The other options is if you had a total or partial interruption of the company's activity due to failure in the supply chain, or also if you suffer a suspension or cancellation of orders that you already had and that created a big loss. Finally, if you have a decrease of at least 40% of revenues in the period of 30 days before you ask for the layoff, before the layoff request, and this 40% is comparing to the average revenue of the 2 months previous your request, or comparing, or also could be comparing with the same period in previous year. If the company has less than 12 months, the comparing of the 40% loss decrease is with the average revenue of the company during this period since it's active.
Diogo, just
yes.
I'm just conscious of the timing, and you know, we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to.
Okay. I will step
so I'm sorry, because it's really interesting, but I'm
almost over.
Okay.
So the simplified layoff, basically what I was telling you is it's the employee will keep in layoff situation, will maintain 2/3 of the gross salary, but keeping a minimum of 635 and a maximum of 1,905 euros per month. This is supported in 70% by the Social Security and in 30% by the employer. The last I heard, at the beginning, the employer would have to support the 70% of Social Security, and then there would be a compensation later, but at the first moment, that would be like this. I don't know if that changed. In addition, the employer is also exempt of paying the 23.25% of Social Security relating to that employer. And this support is valid for 1 month and renewable twice to a maximum of 3 months, the whole layoff period. One important issue is that the company must commit not to reduce any personnel at the whole company. It's not just the workforce, the employees that are in layoff. The first version of this program said that who enters in layoff could not be sent away. Now if a company uses this simplified layoff, they cannot reduce any personnel. Otherwise, they will have to return the investment, the support that the Social Security has made for them. And here are some examples. If the employee earns 635 euros, he will keep earning the same. He will not lose any income, but around 450 euros will be supported by Social Security, and the company, the employers will only have to invest to pay around 200 euros per month. And you can see different wages and the investment of the company, of the employer. There's a cap, so even if the employer earns 5,000 euros per month, for example, he will be limited to earning in layoff situation 1,900 euros. That will cost the employer 500 euros, more or less, not including the savings in Social Security. So this is one of the last slides, this theme. It's very fast. Lisbon has mentioned 13 measures to address the impact of the coronavirus in families and businesses. These are the measures. I will only mention these because they are more directed to companies. The suspension of all taxes to occupation of public spaces and advertising. The City Hall is guaranteeing that they will implement investment plans. So if your company has any, can provide services to the City Hall in the investment plan, you can guarantee that this client will keep on investing and putting forward tenders for operations. I don't know how this will be operated yet. It's not clear what is the action plan, but the cities will create a support team for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise, and they will also create a marketplace to join companies' needs and skills that are offered in Lisbon entrepreneurial ecosystem. Wait, sorry. So that's it. Thank you. Again, I'm available for questions. If for some reason I don't know the answer to the question, you have here my email, so I can learn and find out with more. If the question is too detailed, I can send you the answer later. You can anytime send me an email with questions about this or any other issue about Lisbon, because I'm available and that's my job also. So please, if you have.
Right, so Diogo, thank you very much for the enlightening presentation. For me, it was very interesting to get a perspective of what is being done to help companies with this crisis. I have just two questions. So the first is, are the Social Security contributions moratorium available for everyone, or only for companies with a loss of at least 40% in billing? because I think I saw something related to that. And the other question is if you expect the government and European institutions to present more measures to help companies that are indirectly affected by the lockdown.
So regarding the first question that I have seen, I didn't see any limitation. I think for what I've seen, it seemed to me that it was a choice of the company if they wanted to pay or they wanted to delay the payment. But I can get back on you with that. But I didn't see any indication that there was any limitation on this. Regarding the European support, we cannot never be sure about anything, but I'm almost completely sure that there will be more options, more things available. As I mentioned Monday, so the day before yesterday, the economy minister was saying that he's already asked for an increase on the credit lines from 3.5 billion to 7 billion, so doubling it. One of the credit will be targeting service, commerce and services, trade and services. Sorry, and the other industries. I'm sure that there will be more plans available. These that are now are only the plans for the next month, so it's to minimize the impact. We are not talking about plans to relaunch the economy. These are being made in the last European meeting. They mandate the Eurogroup and the Commission to prepare a plan for the relaunch of the European economy. So these are plans just to stop to minimize the impact. And as you know, every day, even in the plans that were already launched, every day there are changes, there are corrections. So I think that's why I think there's a very good will in making a good plan. There are limitations, of course. Portugal has a big limitation, which is the great debt, international debt that we have. But I think there will be more measures for sure.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for the explanation. And if you can find more about that 40%
Sure.
thing, just follow up on that. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Well, I do have a question. It's not about taxes or incentives, but Diogo Cruz is representing Invest Lisboa, and I think it's a fair question. Lisbon was the drive for this recovery for the economy for the last 5 years. And one of the things that is clear to everybody is that tourism is one of the main industries that will be affected.
Am I the only one who lost him, or?
Lisbon.
No, I also lost.
Part of this.
Yeah, I lost.
Sorry.
You lost to.
Yeah, my connection is not very good. Do you understand my question?
You are mentioning that Lisbon is very.
Lisbon was a drive for the recovery for the economy in the last 5 years. And what do you feel which will be the new?
Oh no, just
main drives to the development of the economy.
Wait.
My connection is awful today. It's impossible. I'm sorry. I was listening to you with. Well, I'm sorry.
If I understand, you were asking if I had any idea what would be the drivers for the recovery of the economy of Lisbon.
For Lisbon. The drivers for Lisbon to try to help in this recovery for the future.
I don't have a clear answer, sorry, unfortunately. I don't think anybody have yet. I know that, of course, the tourism sector that you mentioned will be very affected, and that will affect Lisbon and Portugal as a whole. As I mentioned, 8% of our GDP comes from tourism, and 10% of jobs come from tourism. That's why many of the programs are addressed to tourism. I think Lisbon has more than tourism to offer companies. We have been, in my activity in Invest Lisboa, we have been having a lot of leads and companies interested in Lisbon because, for example, of the quality of the workforce they can find here, especially IT companies, tech companies, that in this global competition for talent found in Lisbon an added, in Portugal, but also a lot in Lisbon, an added advantage to international recruitment, and that didn't change for with the crisis. That will keep on going. But of course, tourism and probably real estate will have some waves. Tourism will have a big wave, and real estate will have some wave, of course, depending on which side of where you're located in the business line. It could be good or bad, this wave. Maybe if you're an investor and there's a decrease on costs, on prices, you could invest and find better opportunities. Opportunities are always there, but I cannot predict how the tourism sector will be. I know what I see already, and I imagine that in the future will be even more, is that it's a big concern of the government. For Lisbon itself, they have launched these 15 measures. I think that was the measures that were possible to launch in such a short term, and the city wanted to give a good sign of response, and the investment level they will keep on this city. They will invest. They will keep the investment plan, and they will pay suppliers and all that. But I'm expecting more detailed and even different plans for the economy in the future. Of course, we are all reacting very, very fast, as we should. But when you react too fast,
one thing was very fast: the decision to close the project for airport in Montijo. That was ended.
Well, I don't know if it's the airport.
A good one, Pedro. A good one.
Well, I don't know if it's a good one, but it is one of the first. I was expecting that announcement, and it just
will
happened
go
today.
to Beja, don't worry.
I don't care where, but we need a new airport.
Oh, we definitely need a new airport.
Yeah, we need a new airport.
I'm sure that wasn't the municipality's decision, because the mayor was very keen on having the airport as soon as possible here, and we need it. But
well, today you don't need it. You just need parking space for airplanes, so no problem. See in the future.
Yeah, Diogo, it was a really excellent presentation with lots of information, because before your presentation, I was wondering what the government was doing to try to save the tourism and hospitality industries, because I didn't hear very much about it. I don't know if it's only me, but I don't know if in terms of communication that was very well done. So I wanted to ask you, and maybe it's probably a difficult question, but do you think that the measures that the government has taken now, because the tourism is going to be really, will have such a big impact with this crisis, do you think that the government has put enough to save as much as we can? And yesterday they were talking about TAP Air Portugal laying off 90% of the workforce. I mean, 90%, that's incredible. And they were already also talking about the bailout of the airline. So is the government, and also the EU Commission, are they doing enough? Are they really realizing the scale of what all this could be. Nobody knows how long time it will be. Some people are even talking about, you know, that's maybe the sensational news, but, you know, a kind of Marshall Plan for Europe to try to save it. And I know, you know, every economy in Europe will be affected by this, and some more than others. But, you know, are the you know, the government, the EU doing enough?
Well, that's the big question. The million-dollar question is how to balance how to reach the point where we provide all the resources we need without depleting too much resources and making a problem for the future. So that balance is the real difficult issue. The other difficult issue is that we don't have time to think, because companies next month will have to pay wages. We'll have to, and so they have to have liquidity on hand to offer companies to make sure that companies are keep on working. And that's a really difficult, that I think that is the short run is the most difficult issue. I think they are doing the best they can. Of course, nothing is perfect, and I know that the layoff measure, which I think in general as a concept is a good tool, because if you have a temporary problem, you can cut some costs for 3 months and try to have some recovery, try to see if the economy recovers later. But it's not perfect, because part of that investment will have to be made by the company, because the Social Security covers 70%, but not at the first moment. It will be later, so that's an issue. The credit lines offer some liquidity, it's true, but the companies maybe are already with some debt, and it's difficult, and so every option has a but. I think that that is very challenging, of course. When we had the 2008 crisis, that was also very challenging. My optimism is coming, my optimism comes from the fact that this is will be probably a more limited in time situation next year. Even in the end of the year, the final quarter, we will have better results, of course, than this one. The problem is this one was really, everything stopped. 1/3 of the world. It's not just Portugal, and the US stopped, and US is a big motor of the economy. So I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen. I know that nobody wants to be a bad thing. I think the Marshall Plan, it would be good, in my opinion, if it's necessary. What I'm worried about is that why are the countries in Europe sitting down and and committing to a unified reply? That's what I'm worried about.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask one thing?
Sure.
About do you think they are the Portuguese government is slow about the action, because they are very bureaucratic? We have a very bureaucratic country, and we need to act now. We have to have actions for the companies and for the people. So they are very slow in doing things in a meaningful way. And about the European country, we have another problem, because they have the funds ready to install. They have everything there, but they are reluctant because they have the stigma of the austerity, and the problem of the euro bonds. It's not a problem, because they have to have 3 years to put all the everything, the treaties, and they have to sign it, and it's a known problem, because they have to rely on the funds that are there already to pick.
The problem with the funds
has just refused it.
The problem with the funds that we have available, the mechanism that we have available, the European mechanism, is that it comes with conditions, and so we as a country, and because this is not a mismanagement issue, is a international issue that affected everybody. If we can access these funds as it is organized now, but there would be what they call conditions, and conditions is austerity program attached to it. So, but the problem is that in this situation, before we had a financial problem, we were living, as they say, above our means, and now it's not the same issue. Now it's the problem is that the economy stopped for such a long time, and we have a really liquidity issue. Companies don't have money to pay wages because they're not selling, and that's a different. It's a different issue. I'm not sure if the same instrument would work with a different issue. The other thing you mentioned is, which I think is completely true, it's the reality we have, is that it takes a long time with the European architecture, political architecture, to decide anything. I have a friend that worked at the European Commission. He worked in the negotiations with China and East Oriental countries a long time ago, 10 years ago. He told me that he was in the negotiation, and the Chinese counterpart said, okay, so our commitment is to do this and that up till December this year. And he was telling me, if we had to do that in Europe, we will be 10 years discussing between ourselves how to get there before the decision. I'm not defending the political system of China, of course not, but the European system is very slow, and we are not at the moment of slow decisions. So I'm hoping that it's a hope, it's not an expectation, that there is some change in mindset for faster decisions. But we'll see.
Anybody else? One or two more questions? No?
Okay, so you have my email. If you remember questions later, or if there are new programs that you want to learn about it better and they are all in Portuguese, anything, please send me emails. As I mentioned, I'm not an expert on this, but we have lots of partners that are. So if you send me an email in Portuguese or in English, I will answer you back with experts' opinion on each subject.
Diogo, one thing which might be interesting is maybe if you have some links that you can maybe send me, which I can share.
Okay, the problem is the links are all in Portuguese. There are some interesting links with the information, but it's the big challenge here for me was to find the information first, because it's always changing and there's contradictory information, and they were all in Portuguese. I haven't found almost no information about this in English.
Sure.
But I can send you the links, of course.
Okay. So that's it, yeah? Nobody? Last question? No?
I hope you are
Okay.
all well, and hope that this finish fast. I'm really tired of being at home.
Yeah.
I have my kids here, and it's very difficult to work at home with my kids around, and so
I know.
I see some solidarity faces.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Diogo. That was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diogo. Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks, Diogo.
Diego.
Thank you,
Excellent
everybody.
presentation. Thanks a lot. Sure. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.